Podcast, a platform created to entertain, educate, and evolve the modern-day deer hunter. All right, I want to start off by saying I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me tonight. I know it's been hard to schedule, and I realize now, just in talking with you the last couple of weeks, you keep yourself extremely busy. So why don't you just go ahead, introduce yourself to our listening audience, and tell everybody what you do on a week-to-week basis as your profession.
Yeah, so my name is Cody D'acquisto, and I work for XOP. I design and sell hunting products and tree stands, climbing sticks, that kind of thing,
And XOP is a company that focuses on hunting products for, would you say mobile hunters, or would you word it differently?
Yeah. I think mobile hunting is a big part of what we do. It's kind of how, this style of stand was born years ago, being that we are so close to, kind of a derivative of lone wolf tree stands, and a lot of our products are based off those designs. And not to say that we don't, have stands that are great to hang up and leave. It's a quality stand, not only for mobile hunting, but you can't beat the cast aluminum. They'll last, lifetime. So they don't rust, they don't crack, they don't fill with water. They're not hollow tubes. So I think we cater on that, quality spectrum, a little above like strictly mobile, but we do got some great options for mobile hunting.
So it's kind of interesting, and I've been reflecting. I started doing this a year ago, right? And I kind of been reflecting back on like, what have I learned over the last year? And coming into this season, I realized that out of all the conversations that I've had with guys that I would identify as guys that are kind of at the next level, maybe not defining that by success, but just how they think about deer hunting and how they talk about deer hunting and how they communicate with others. And the biggest thing that I've heard unanimously when I ask people, what's the one thing that changed the way you hunt or kind of took you up to, the next level and help you have consistent success? And the unanimous answer has been getting mobile, not sitting the same trees all the time, not pre-hanging stands, getting comfortable with a mobile setup and being able to move over 10 feet or move to a different, parcel. If the parcel that you're on, you identify it's just not happening here right now and I don't have the time to waste and burn. Would you agree with that? I mean, is it that big of a factor in what you do year to year to be able to have success?
Yeah. I think being mobile is very important. There's, I have stands, that are hung, that have been hung for years, that are in good spots. Good spots are always good spots. You'll find them. I think you'll learn new properties, and you'll be able to kind of identify those spots from others. But that doesn't mean that sometimes you got to move from that spot. I mean, I do think the worst thing you can do is just stay in one place. I mean, that's just, I think, that is bad. Now, so I definitely think it's important to kind of, stay with the pattern, the current movement, move if you need to. One of the biggest things that really kills me when I hear people telling me a story, and they're telling me a story and said, I was sitting in the corner of this field, and I had this really good buck come out, about 200 yards north of me, and I watched him eating the beans, and he made a scrape, and he did this, he did that, and the next portion of the story is, so then I was there the next night, and I watched this deer. He came out, 150 yards north of me, and came onto the beans and made a scrape, and kind of milled around, and he continued to tell me the story. And then the next night I was out there, and he came out with beans again, 150 yards, and I'm thinking to myself, like, and I got to stop the guy, and I'm like, man, why weren't you 150 yards north on that field? And so I think there's a lot of, and sometimes they don't even know. You're like, what? Well, if you're comfortable watching the deer, I guess that's fine. But if you want to kill them, let's do something about it.
Right. Do you think all deer are differently, or is it pretty unanimous? I guess if we're going to focus on like a more mature age class of deer, how low is their tolerance for, and how quickly do you think that they pick up that, damn, somebody's been here, somebody's hunting me, I need to adjust my pattern? Are all deer like completely different? Like one will have tolerance for it and one will have zero, or is it kind of,
No, I 100% believe that all deer are different. You can't, there's no fix. You can't, I mean, there's no correct answer for every single deer. I look at deer like people. All people are different. I mean, there's people with dominant personalities. There's people with submissive personalities. There's people who, you could literally walk up to them and push them down 15 times and they don't get it. And then there's other people that you try and push them down once and that you get your head knocked off. So I think that, along with the area where that deer lives, what he's experienced from the time he's grown. I mean, a pressured deer who's constantly pressured and associates everything with danger is going to be harder to kill than one that doesn't. But beyond that, I think there's temperaments to those deer, and so yeah, I think it's a big there's a big difference between every deer. Yeah.
I've noticed in the last couple years, I know you did a podcast here with the guys from the hunting public a couple weeks ago, and I would encourage anybody to go listen to that, because I'm going to tell them to do that versus me rehatching, a lot of the conversation that you had on there with those guys. But one thing that I did hear you talk about was, trail cameras, and I think it's taken me a long time to really figure out how to use trail cameras to my advantage versus hurting myself with them. And I'm definitely not there all the way, but I'm like super conscious now, way more so than I was in the past, of what I'm doing with them as far as trying to not harm the areas that I'm hunting versus just trying to get intel. And one thing that I'll say that cameras have really helped me do is identify how vastly different deer react in situations. With the Exodus camera having that video mode, you get so much more information than you do with a picture, because you see how a deer socially interacts with other deer, and you see how that deer, you don't just get a picture and then nothing else. You're getting up to 90 seconds of seeing how that deer reacts when that camera goes off. It's amazing to me, some deer, and they could be the same age. It could be a 4.5-year-old buck. One deer might walk right up to that thing and smell that camera and lick it and then hang out in front of it for 10 minutes like he likes the attention. He likes being in front of the thing. And some of them, as soon as that thing goes off, they are literally running away from that thing like someone jumped out from behind a tree and screamed in their face.
Think about a dog who was beat with a broom, ever since he was born. You're probably not going to be able to get that dog to cuddle up to a broom ever in its life. I mean, it's just, I think there's a lot of that goes on with deer, and I mean, I don't know. I've had young deer that were really cagey, in areas that I was hunting, and then old deer that seemed kind of stupid. So I don't think it's just an age thing either. I mean, I personally have never really, I don't care about the age, really. I mean, I'm out there looking for, what I like in a rack. And I mean, if that deer's young, that deer's young. I mean, sometimes, like I said, I've hunted old deer that have been around for a while, and they were so in their pattern that they were so easy to manipulate. I mean, it was, that deer's been around 6-7 years, maybe in a not high pressured area. One walk through the woods will tell you exactly what that deer is doing, and he's dead. So I mean, it's old definitely doesn't mean super smart by any means in my book.
So you don't, I believe I heard you say correctly, you don't use cameras at all, right?
Oh, no, I use cameras.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, I use cameras. I just, I use them limitingly. I like to, I think so many people rely a little too much on cameras. I guess I like to use them definitely to get some intel, around this time of year, before I go in, but I don't go tromping into the middle of nowhere typically and kind of set them where I think I'm going to be hunting. I just feel like every year that I've ran a lot of cameras or tried to get into the camera zone a lot, I've kind of slacked in other aspects of my hunting because I was trying to let that camera do, a lot of my scouting for me. And that kind of, I think, hurts. So, but yeah, I mean, I love using cameras just at the right time, or definitely, scrapes that pop up on field edges and stuff that like, I won't have to mess up anything going in. They're easy to check. I've hunted leases with guys who are hanging cameras, on the skirts of these bedding areas, way deep in the woods, and they're checking them every 2 days, and they're going in there and
Right.
pushing stuff out. So, I mean, to each their own, but I like to limit my use of them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things like I was talking about, doing myself more harm than good, right? That's one thing that I've been able to control myself a lot better this year than in years past. Two-part thing is, one, I'm conscious of it, and two, I'm actually so busy that I don't have time to be going and checking them every 2 or 3 days. But I hung cameras on May 5th, and I just checked them this weekend, and I put fresh batteries and fresh cards in them, and I put them all back out, kind of changed them for what I think will be seasonal patterns, and I won't go revisit those cameras until probably like beginning of November, maybe like November 5th or something, because I feel like I might see something on there November 5th that's like, all right, this is happening now, I need to be here now. And last year I didn't check cameras again until November 15th, like from beginning of October till November 15th, and I saw some stuff like November 1st that between November 1st and November 10th I could have capitalized on. So I'm going to check them a little bit sooner this year, but I guess what I'm getting at is, yeah, I'm only checking my cameras now a year like 2 or 3 times, really, and I'm kind of relying on them for like next year, like planning ahead. I feel like that's one of the ways that I've heard guys talk about it, and what I'm going to try to focus on actually using the information to benefit me versus hurting me.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. I mean, there's so many, good benefits to cameras. I mean, and even, it depends on, I think, how much ground you're running too. I mean, if you're hunting a piece of ground as vast as the one you are, and it's,
Right.
pretty time consuming to get from area to area, then, cameras might be a lot more beneficial than a guy hunting 400 acres that he can, drive public roads around. So, I think, a lot of that's situational too, and for your style and where you're at.
Yeah, I hope to be at a point, and have a confidence level in years ahead, and I intend to, where I'm not saying that I won't need them, because part of it too is that they're fun, right? I like going through the photos. I like seeing the photos. I like seeing the deer from year to year. That all is really entertaining to me. It's cool to, especially up north, get a video clip of a black bear or an elk or something. I really enjoy that aspect of it too. But I feel like after 4 or 5 years of using these things and focusing on that next year behavior, and then seeing what I see next year, that I'll be able to build my knowledge and my confidence to a point where I'm like, all right, I don't even need to put a camera here. I know this area. I know what happened here the last 2 years in a row. It's going to happen here again this year. And maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. That's all a learning curve. But I think it'll be, because I'm kind of at an entry level point here where I'm becoming a mobile hunter and trying to maybe get to the next level of understanding deer behavior, that they're a valuable tool to me at this point at where I am.
Oh yeah, and I think they're all always a valuable thing to do. I mean, you're never going to be out there enough to know 100%. Yeah, and in no means am I like a camera hater. I love cameras. I run them yearly. I just try not to let the camera be my only, my only deciding factor. Like I talk to so many guys. They're like, oh, I got no pictures of bucks right here, so I'm not hunting there. That is what I disagree with.
Yeah.
I mean, I like I said, I'm all about cameras. I don't think I'd ever like not use a camera. There's been years before where I just didn't have the time and never set me out, and then went out and hunted and didn't mind it one bit. But yeah, I just think it's when you really let those be like your, you put all your eggs in that one camera basket, and a lot of times that can end up burning you.
So let's do this. Let's kind of walk through maybe your season. We can do this in, whatever fashion you feel is the best way to get the information that's needed. But I guess what I'm kind of looking at, like, what's your yearly systematic approach? Like, start me at ground level from, and the reason I'm bringing this up now is because we're talking about camera, and that's like obviously part of your strategy that you implement. But like, year to year, where do you start? Where, how do you scout? What's the next thing or the most thing that's of importance to you that you're looking at, aside from like photos and what deer are in the area?
Yeah, I think the biggest, I mean, and in no way, like, just to start off by saying, I mean, I don't have some rhyme or reason or by the book. Every year I do this, and by this time of year I'm hunting this, and I 100% just play it by what's going on.
Okay.
I first of all, I think the most important thing is you got to know that you're, or at least for me at least, I got to know there's something I want to shoot in that area. So I don't want to waste any time, hunting deer smaller than what I want to see or shoot. So I like to try and just pin down, the biggest thing that, I've always heard, kind of the old man say and stuff too. Like, you can't kill them if they're not there. It's totally true. I've hunted ghosts, in the past, and you end up burning up an entire season waiting for that mega giant, and that mega giant don't exist. He's not on your farm, or he's not in that area.
Right.
So, and even then, you can be being as mobile as you want, and you could be bouncing around, and you could be moving and getting where the deer are and seeing deer and having great sits and get great days. But if that deer, if your bar's 150, if you want a 150 so bad, you want a 150, and that 150 is not on the piece of ground you're hunting, then there's nothing you can do. You hunted your ass off, and sometimes you can, kind of discourage yourself from, busting ass, not getting it done. Well, he wasn't there. I mean, you gotta be where the deer are. So,
so how do you go about identifying that? I mean, like we were just talking about, cameras can be a tool to do that. Yeah. What
and
other?
That's a great way to do it. I mean, running those cameras pre-season or whatnot, like right now, it's like I'll finally start to toss out a few cameras just to kind of get an intel of what's in the area, and see if I can't get a picture of something, that I want to shoot. If I do, then the next step is just, waiting for that season. I don't like to go in and do a lot of summer stuff or like, if the season opens October, I don't like messing around September 1 or August or, I really just wait, and I kind of get in there and I assess what's going on, like, as is in that moment, and but I work off what's going on at the time. So
What how else do you go about it? I mean, do you do like the glassing thing, or you're relying on
Yeah. Oh yeah.
sign?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Sorry if I'm kind of bouncing around. Yeah,
No.
I'll do. Around this time of year too. I mean, it's always a good idea. I grew up ever since I was little. I mean, I'd get tossed in the truck at sundown and we'd go drive around. So, I mean, I think that's a big crucial part of it too. Just for finding out what's in the area. If you got the time, grab a set of binos and definitely cruise the perimeter, or even in that prime time in the morning. You know, about that half hour to hour after after sun comes up, you get some deer in that transition, and I think you got a really good opportunity to get your eyes on one. Just kind of cruise around the areas you're going to be hunting. Um,
What about like non maybe less agricultural stuff where you don't have an opportunity to drive roads and glass fields, or maybe like a place where you're traveling to hunt where you're just kind of relying on, hey, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to take an evaluation on whether or not I think it's happening here, if I should focus my time here, or if I should burn rubber to the next, to the next spot, to the next piece. Do you have, a way you go about that?
like, I mean, as far as like big timber situations or a bigger piece, or I mean, I've I do tend to hunt public and smaller parcels. But like when I'm going out of state, I guess I'm going to Kansas or Missouri or something, or somewhere different than it's 8-9 hours away, and I'm cruising down there. I'd first probably do my due diligence, looking at maps and aerials of these pieces that I was going to be on, try and kind of see the lay of the land, see what I can work with, wind direction and stuff like that. Check access, just the type of ground it is, and I kind of I'll narrow down my search by if I think the piece looks good. If I think the piece looks good, I'm going to kind of commit to that piece. So like if you gave me permission to hunt your 8,000 acres, I wouldn't look at it as hunting 8,000 acres. I'd definitely split that up. And I would look at it as like, okay, I'm gonna concentrate on this 800 acres. This is what I feel would produce the best deer, or where I think the best deer would be, and I'd tackle that first. I think that's the only way to do it. You spread yourself too thin when you're looking at too much ground. I've tried to glass 8 different pieces in a 20-mile radius that was a couple thousand acres a piece on each. It's too much. You're spreading yourself too thin. You're in too many areas. I would just say, dive in, focus on one area, and, get the most out of that one area. If it's not producing after, a certain amount of time, then get the hell out of there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to be my next question. Like systematically, how do you approach it to where you're not like trampling through? I'm assuming you're conscious of when you're going in there that you're not trampling through the whole thing and kind of burning the spot like in the first hunt. I mean, do you have a way that you approach that? And then I guess the second part of that is like, what's your time frame on basically when you're making a judgment call, or is it how many hunts, or just depending on what you're seeing where you're like, yeah, not happening here, need to.
Yeah, it all depends. It changes, man. Like I said, it just, if we're talking about an area that I know absolutely nothing about, I mean, it's going to depend on how many deer I'm seeing, what kind of, it really changes in any scenario, honestly. I mean, I might hunt there for a couple of days, and be out of there, or I might hunt there for, a week. It's so hard to kind of put I don't say like, oh, well, I'm giving this one sit and I'm leaving, or I'm giving, because if I'm hunting there, I have a good feeling about it, because I do like to have faith in the stand that I'm sitting in. So, I don't want to just, kind of be sit there. So
Yeah, it's
that's where I
crazy.
think I get, oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just thinking back to a scenario 2 years ago where I kind of just started learning about mobile hunting. I didn't have the equipment to do it appropriately, but what I did start doing is just checking out some different places. I kind of grew up hunting private land. Um, but what I didn't realize is that my private land had way more pressure on it than some of the public land surrounding it. And so I instantly started seeing results and seeing more deer just by going to places where I think deer recognized that year to year people weren't intruding in there. And man, I saw a giant buck on public land like when I first started doing that. And knowing what I know now, and if I had encountered that situation this year, I'll be approaching it completely differently. But I was bow hunting this piece just prior to the gun opener, and I had an encounter with the biggest deer I've ever seen, period, in the woods. And I would guess him to be, well over 130 inches. He's a mature northern Michigan, big woods deer, dark chocolate rack, and just heavy body. And the thing was probably 80 yards from me, chasing some does around and some thick cover. And I thought, I'll come back here tomorrow. And I thought I was in the right place, right? It was just a matter of time until he was going to walk in front of me. And after seeing him 3 sits, just kind of what you were talking about here at the beginning of this, why didn't you move? And I think back, why didn't I move? Like the 4th night, when I came in, I bumped that deer off his bed. I think I caused him to just stand up, and he watched me, but where he was bedded and the way I walked in, looking back on it now, I think that when I first had the situation happen, I thought that I had just seen the deer moving in the afternoon and watched him bed. Well, now looking back on it, I think what happened is he was bedded. I disturbed him when I came in. He got up. I think he believed that I walked past him far enough to where I wasn't a direct threat, but he still wasn't comfortable with where he was. And what he did is walk out farther away from me, about 50 yards, and he had one pine tree to clear, and he was going to walk into an open, a little open patch where I was going to have a clear shot. At this point, it was the opener of firearm, and he didn't. He bedded down behind that one last lone pine tree, and he sat there till the cover of darkness until he got up and moved off. But looking back on that, and if I encounter that again this year, I would think that if not after the first encounter, after the second encounter, I would have enough confidence to say, okay, tomorrow I need to be here.
Oh yeah. I think you definitely got to play it. You got to play it by the situation. I mean, and that, depending on when that was. I mean, that was the evening. I mean, it could have been. You never know. That deer honestly could have got up earlier and could have moved earlier. Maybe he thought he got away with it. Maybe you got in and he had no recollection, and maybe it wasn't him being smart and sitting till that time. Maybe that's just the time he was going to get up anyway.
Right.
So I think you got to think about it a couple of different ways. I always like to think outside the box a little bit. Maybe it was the moon phase dictating that, he wasn't getting up at that time. Maybe he would have never moved from that bed. Maybe you did bump him and maybe he knew what was going on. But I think if he really thought something was going on, he probably would have been out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, that deer did what he did, and like you said, the only thing you could do now is be a little more aggressive, and if you fail, you fail.
Right. So is there anything like sign-wise when you're going into these? I mean, are you tiptoeing into these things, or are you burning into them, having like a place in mind where you're going, or are you kind of the mindset like, hey, I'm just going to walk into here until this starts to get good, or where I think it's going to start to get good, and either I do or don't see what I want? I mean, how quick are you to go in? What are you looking for, and what are you essentially setting up on if you're, if we're just strictly talking about maybe a new piece, or even if you're moving just a little bit from, where you hunted the last couple days?
Yeah, I'll systematically move. I'll look, especially in new pieces. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what's moving. I don't typically like to, I don't go and do the crazy trample through, right off the bat. I definitely feel like I ease into things. I mean, I'm not gonna upset like a buck's bedding area if I know I could kill him on a field edge. I mean, I think a lot of times, I've killed a lot of deer in their bedding areas. I watched my dad do it, back in the day, and I think it's kind of something that he, coined. Really getting in on deer on their beds, and nobody was doing that when he did. And as much as I do that, it's not. I think people have this assumption that like I'm out there, just like that's my only thing. I just want to go kill them off their bed. Like I'm not gonna mess that up if I don't have to. I think once you get that deep into it and you get into their areas like that, learning how to manipulate that specific area with the stand setup is probably the most important thing. I've messed up on so many deer, just like, okay, finding that hot spot, or, knowing where they've bedded, and, setting up with the wrong wind, or just, being in the wrong tree, or bumping them or whatnot again, and then never seeing them. So that stuff does happen. And, there's been deer, a lot of times I'll hunt a deer maybe in the evening, and I won't even hunt them in the morning. I'll go hunt some other deer in the morning or some other place, just because I don't want to mess up with that. I don't want to mess up his pattern if I know what he's doing at a certain time and I think I can kill him there. Now, so that it creates a whole different systematic approach, and now I'm not being aggressive. I'm kicking back and I'm waiting, but as soon as I feel in my head that it's not going to happen, well, then I'm done. I'm out of there, So it's, I get, again, it's situational. I've waited out deer like that and ended up killing them, and I've also waited out deer like that and, never killed them, and then, realized, well, maybe if I would have went in that, spot where I thought he was bedded, and maybe I would have killed him, but, there was that opportunity there in the evening, so I didn't make it more complicated than it was, So I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people overthink it and think like, oh, I gotta find this, or I gotta do this, and say I gotta be aggressive, so I gotta, handstand walk in there so I don't leave boot tracks, and I gotta, elevate up to my fucking tree and not make a single. I mean, sometimes I think people just overthink it. Simplicity. I mean, common sense. I think that rules over all, personally.
Yeah, I've had that problem. Like I'll like be walking out, and I'll be in my head. I'll be like, man, there's two different places that I'm thinking would be good for tonight, but I got a little bit of time on my walk in to decide if I'm going to go left or right. You know what I mean? And I'll get to that point where I need to make the decision to go left or right, and I'll stand there for like 10 minutes, like fight myself, like go left or go right. And I'll like start going right, and I'll be like, no, you got to go left. And I'll go back left.
Pull out the quarter, man.
Yeah.
Just flip it. Flip that coin. No, I mean, it's, yeah, I hear you there.
So is a lot of it, you're kind of going with your gut. I mean, you let past experiences kind of dictate what your gut says, right? And there's no replacement for that. But does that what a lot of it comes down to? Is it just like gambling, rolling the dice, and trusting your instincts and your gut feeling?
Yeah, I don't feel like, it's weird you said that word, gamble. I don't feel like I definitely do not gamble a lot, when I'm going after a certain deer. Like, if I know, I mean, that's, getting into that's one big thing, like that wind direction, man. You got to learn how to play that wind, and you got to know, because, in my opinion, you cannot beat that deer's nose. I mean, you can run your ozonics, you can, take a bath in whatever magic juice you're going to want to take a bath in. You can do whatever, and it might help you a little bit, but you're never going to beat that deer's nose. So stop trying. Like that's, I don't mess around with a lot of scent stuff, in my personal opinion. It's just, I play the wind so critically that I don't care if I'm a little stinky, like, or not, I didn't mean to say it like that, but, I still wash my clothes. I'm still a cleanly person, but I mean, I don't gamble. I'm not going to hunt that stand with the wrong wind. I'm only going to hunt that stand if it's right. So my gambling is definitely to a minimum. I just make sure I cover my bases. I make sure I'm in the right spot. I make sure my stand is set up accordingly, so when that deer does show himself, he's dead. I try and think a little deeper into it, more than just, oh, I need to hang a stand in this area. I'm like, okay, no, I need to be this high off the ground. My stand needs to be facing this direction, so I only move 10 inches, and I can come to full draw, and then he's done without me even blinking. I never have to move a muscle. He'll never get my wind. He's going to do this. So I really just try and dissect everything, especially when I get closer, like in the timber, close quarter situations, in a bedding area, in a, stuff like that. Like I want to make sure, like, I look at it, you got that one shot, man. I mean, some of them deer, they bug out after that one shot. They might not all, but they might not bug out. They might come in and you might think everything was all copacetic and you didn't get your shot off, but they knew something was up. That's their, if I go into your bedroom and I, change, the picture on or I knock the picture off your nightstand, you're going to come in there and know the picture's knocked off your nightstand. I think they're, smart in that way. And, even if they come in and, they don't bug out, a lot of times they get tipped off.
Right. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I had somebody say to me one time, I don't remember who I was having the conversation with, but they said almost something similar to that. Like, if you come home and you see some muddy boot tracks on the sidewalk out in front of your house, you're not going to have concerns about whose muddy boot tracks those are. But if you were to come home and open your door and there's muddy boot tracks in your kitchen, you'd be freaking out, And that was one of those things that clicked in my head, was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I listened to that, and even like what I said, I mean, deer are animals, they can't reason like we can. So, to whether, there's some guys I've seen that literally take their, and try and, disguise their boot tracks in the ground when they're walking on trails and this and that. Like, that kind of stuff I don't think is as crucial as some people play it out to be. I'm more so talking along the lines of, if a deer has an established bedding area and he's in there every day, and I mean, and this place is, showing that he's in there every day and that's where he's living, you coming in there and spreading your scent around is going to be something he's not used to. Like there's going to be something about it that he's not used to. Now, if that deer is bedding, 5 yards off a hiking trail, we'll go, have at it, man. I think you could probably go in there and just, hang out for as long as you want. And I mean, leave as much scent as you want. He's used to that. So again, it's like where you're at, what the area is telling you. And then, but that first time, capitalizing on that first time is definitely your best bet. I think your chances are going down, quite significantly every time after that.
When you're talking about bedding areas, let's kind of focus on mature deer. Do you think that they generally do bed in the same area? This is something that I've been working on because, the bedding area thing's kind of been the hot thing for the last year or 2 years, as far as like having success at killing bigger deer on more pressured land, right? You got to get to where they're comfortable, and where they're comfortable is in their bedding areas. But I'm still struggling to find bedding areas, and a lot of times when I do find them, they don't have like this. I see guys posting things on forums and on social media, like these just worn in beds into the dirt where a deer or multiple deer have been bed. I don't see that.
I don't think, sorry, not to interrupt, but I don't think it's not about just getting in a bedding area. It's about getting where the deer are moving around somewhere. So whether that's in their bedding area, or whether they're moving out to a food source, or they're eating browse right in their bedding area, or they're doing something, you got to tap into what they're doing. Like, it's not, the bed is a very crucial piece of the puzzle. And if you know where they're bedded, then that's a big plus, and you can get at to them right there. But I don't think it's just the bed. Like, I think it's just, in my opinion, they have a pattern. Every deer has something that they're doing. Now, do they bed in the same spot? No, not all deer. I mean, I 100% believe that is not the case. I've hunted old deer that were like nomads that were bedding on a different ridge every day. So it's definitely not. There's not always like these designated. There's areas in the timber that deer will typically bed, and where deer generally bed, that you can call those bedding areas. As far as one buck on a peninsula on a ridge, one buck bed. I mean, that buck bed might not be getting used every night. I mean, all deer are different, man. Everything is happening, I think, differently.
Yeah, some kind of goes back to what you're saying about all deer having prior experiences and being genetically different and having different personalities. That's just, I always wonder, like, it doesn't seem to me like it's that cut and dry, like they're going to consistently be here. I feel like one day they might be here, one day they might be a mile away, and trying to figure out why they're doing that seems to be a pretty difficult thing.
Well, with that being said, I mean, if you look at enough ground, you will find areas that are just generally great areas. I mean, you can't beat, a pinch point that's 20 yards wide between two giant chunks of timber with, cliffs on each side of that pinch point. Like, there's ways you can improve your success by just limiting your area. I mean, that area right there I just explained to you, that will be good every year for every year going forward, as long as deer exist and as long as, things are happening like that. Come a certain point in time,
Right.
Come that point in time when any deer from that one big chunk wants to get to the other big chunk, well, you're right in the money spot, man. I mean, I do feel like there's areas, there's ridges that deer typically take, path of least resistance, or because it's, a trail that's been formed over the course of, 10 years that, so there is a lot of that going on too. And that's what's nice about, like that early season, late season patterns, this happening, that happening. It's not just bucks just, running crazy looking for does either. And just,
What other kind of travel corridors do you, I mean, is the travel corridor something that I've heard a lot of guys talk about this, and I think myself included. I'll focus maybe a little more on pinch points and travel corridors come like pre-rut and rut, just because deer seems to be generally or more active or during daylight hours. Is that something that you're taking into account, or how do you what do you look for in like what we'll consider travel corridors or pinch points?
I mean, you're talking about like in November, like in the rut, you mean?
Yeah, come like late October, November.
Yeah, you can't get wrong. I think being on a heavy trail in November. I mean, where the does are going, the bucks are going. There's,
right.
It's kind of, just putting yourself out there in a good spot that the deer are moving through. I mean, transition areas, pinches between bedding areas, ridges that are positioned or a buck could scent check that whole bedding area. I mean, I try and think about a buck, and I mean, think about what he's doing, and look at the lay of the land. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I wanted to scent check this whole bedding area and see if there was does in there, and I'd probably do this, and then I just kind of adjust accordingly. And so it's not, I don't know. I personally don't like November. It's cool. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff happening, but it's kind of a shit show, man. There's just everything's running everywhere. I mean, one doe, could, just seal your fate. I mean, you're putting all your hands in the, on that, and just this rowdy behavior, and it's kind of so chaotic,
So are you more of the mindset that you like to focus on early season, and maybe, or is there like a week in October that you like a lot, or what do you like to focus on? What's your favorite time of the year?
I hunt all year. I mean, so I like early, I like late, I like November. I like them all for different reasons, but I think if you're trying to kill a specific deer, your best option, or your best chance at that is it's early and late. Or, maybe even early they're on their, tail end of their summer patterns, and I think they're doing, a lot of the same things. But then again, late October rolls around, coming into November, you're going to have a deer that's probably on its same pattern, but is getting a little more rowdy and trying to just express to everybody else that he's there. So you might get a little bit more territorial, and you might be able to kill him over something like a scrape. And, come November, he's running. He might be 8 miles away, which sucks. If he lives and doesn't get shot by some shotgun hunter in shotgun season and die 8 miles away or die on the neighbor's ground, and he makes it through Christmas or whatnot, it's going to get cold. He's going to start to want to get back on his, daily routine. And I think that's a really good time to capitalize on what the deer are doing, focusing on different food sources. And you can really, kind of dissect the situation and pick it apart. And, you get a deer that's at least on somewhat of a pattern.
All right. I missed kind of a topic that you started to touch on, and I want to go a little bit more in depth in it. Step back here for a second. You started to talk about, scent control and the wind. How do you use the wind to your advantage? What are you doing on your way in? And once you get there, to verify that your wind is what you want? I mean, in your head, what's going on? How are you approaching that? Because I'm of the mindset too. I don't, I do exactly what you said. I wash my stuff, probably prior to season, and maybe like halfway through before I do like my big hunting trip, I realize that my stuff's been worn for a couple weeks, and it probably wouldn't. It's not going to hurt it to get washed and not smell as bad. But the other part of that is too, like when I go up to our hunting camp, I might go 3 or 4 days without, a shower. I'm definitely not washing my clothes. I might be standing around a smoky campfire in the evening, warming up. So the whole, scent control thing to me doesn't really work for a lot of the ways that I hunt. So I kind of have been of the mindset the last couple of years too, where I'm focusing on just learning about how the wind works in the woods, how deer use it to their advantage, and what I can do to use it to my advantage to have more of advantage over them.
Yeah, I mean, the wind is the biggest piece of the puzzle. They got, their noses are so good that you gotta stay upwind of that deer, or you gotta manipulate whatever area you're hunting to which that deer is not going to smell you. It's another concept that I think people overthink a little bit. There's things you'll learn, like the way thermals work, and your scent rising and your scent falling in different areas, and there's areas even on my home farm here that I don't touch because I know the wind is so it's just a tricky bitch. Sometimes it'll go down, it'll be going right down the canyon, and then it'll bust an eddy, come back, and there's different lays of land that'll affect the wind differently and what your scent will do. Wind speed, if you're thermals in the morning, you're going to get that little bit of a rise. When the sunset in the evening, you're getting that fall. So it's a pretty complex topic, but fairly simple. I mean, just, hey, don't let that, figure out what that deer is doing, and then get close enough to him where you can get a lethal shot where he can't smell you. Now, sometimes it's, obviously every situation is different. You got to dive into it accordingly, but I think that's pretty much I don't know. It's hard to.
So is most of that just trial and error and evaluating what you've done in the past, or has there been something along the line for you where it was kind of like an aha moment, or maybe somewhere something that you read or picked up? Was it something maybe you learned from a bit from your dad or other influences of you, or?
No, I mean, I know that Dad always took the wind seriously, and that was just something that I've done from day one. And it only, like, this comes back to the common sense thing a little bit. I mean, if the deer's main lines of defense, I think its number one line of defense would be its nose. So, you're trying to outsmart that for one. If they smell, there's so many guys who are failing in the woods, and I think they're getting busted by deer that are so far away from them they don't even know they're getting busted.
Oh, yeah.
I've watched myself get winded clear across just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards of corn like that. I could barely see the deer. I could just see a clear vision of him on my binoculars, and he's running down, and as soon as he hits my wind line, he freaking, just goes nuts. So, it's not something that I'm sitting there wrapping my brain at. Hey, what can I carry in? Hey, can I carry in this ozonics to set this to help me? Yeah, it might be helping you, but it's never, to me, it's always been a trade-off that wasn't worth doing. I set my stands accordingly, and now has there been times where, I've set up for a certain wind direction and the wind changes while I'm in the tree? Well, yeah, that happens a lot. I might just call it quits and get down, or I might play it out and see how it goes, depending on where I'm at and how close I am to what I want to kill or what's going on, or if the movement is a little different than I thought it'd be. But I'm always light too, that's why I use the stands that I use. That's why I hunt like I hunt. Like, the last thing I want to do is carry out more shit and set it up in the tree. I think if half the guys put as much time in the woods and looking around and scouting and using their head that they did, burying their clothes or, like saying a voodoo ritual over their clothes to get rid of all the scent every morning. And you know what I mean? Some guys, I think, quit trying to figure out how to eliminate your scent and just figure out how to, not let that deer smell you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I've read enough pieces now where, intelligent guys have done, and even some, I don't know if they've done them at universities or where, but for like an infield ozone generator to work the way that the manufacturers will show you in the the little demonstration photos or in the commercials, you have to have the perfect set of circumstances that almost are hard to even replicate in a natural environment. I mean, if you're going to set the thing up in a lab under a set controlled environment, yeah, they can make the thing work the way they say it's going to work. But is that going to work out in the natural environment? And from what I've read, it's been pretty consistent that no, man, you're better off putting your money and effort into something else. So I couldn't be in more complete agreement. I know ozone works. I mean, we have a camper.
It works.
Yeah, we have a camper at our camp that 4 or 5 guys might sleep in for a week, and we have an ozone thing in there to it gets funky in there. But you turn that thing on, and in 30 minutes you go in there and you're like, wow, it's amazing what ozone can do. And there's probably some benefits to using some of the gear containers and things and actually cleaning your gear with ozone, but the infield stuff to me seems like a stretch.
Yeah. And even I have good buddies who I value their opinions greatly that swear by those knives. And they take it out every time they go out there, and I'm just like, dude, I don't get it, man. That's not for me, personally. Like I said, I know the technology works, but to me, it's more. I have a systematic approach when I go on there. I'm trying to go in there to kill. I'm trying to get up there, get set up as quickly as possible, and get the job done and get out. I mean, I already, with like filming myself and stuff, I already take camera. I already got a camera I'm set up. Like I'm more in the business of getting shit off my back, not putting more stuff in my pack.
Yeah, right. I hear you. And what if you get out? Like you said too, you're relying on that. What if you get out there and everything you're relying on is that thing working, and you get out there and the battery dies or the thing doesn't turn on, or so what? You're done. Like, how is that? I guess I'm in the mindset of wanting to be more of like a natural predator, not somebody that's having to rely on, like you said, carrying more stuff into the woods. And if you're putting all your eggs in that basket and that basket breaks, then where are you left, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, and yeah, just I guess just a different way to look at things, you know. I mean, it's not a bad way. Like I said, I got buddies who use it and they love it, you know. But
It's just
yeah,
all what you basically said.
yeah,
I don't
it's
think you can
preference.
beat a deer's.
That's the thing. Like, I'm not going to tell anybody how to do anything. I'm just saying what I do. You know, what works for me.
Right. Yep, I get
and
that.
I feel like focusing more on the, you know, more on the basics and is always a better route. You know.
It's you know, you're talking about deer watching deer that, you know, how they react when they wind you. And a couple of years ago, I was hunting ridge line, and I had a cousin that was hunting that ridge line like probably a little more than a quarter mile away, and I had a year and a half old buck come out in front of me. He was probably like 60 yards, and the wind's strong in my face. And he got right up on that ridge line, like right straight out in front of me, and he stopped on a dime. And he put his nose up into the air and was smelling around, and then I watched him just instantly kind of freak out and tuck his tail and double back, and I'm like, how in the world could he have winded me? You know, like there was a 7 to 10 mile an hour wind in my face. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, my cousin's like sitting down that ridge a quarter mile. That deer smelled him. And
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and my cousin would never have known that. You know what I mean? It's just, that's kind of crazy when you mention that thought popped up in my head when that happened to me a couple of years ago. It was like, how much stuff's happening in the woods that you're not even witnessing as far as deer smelling you.
Oh yeah, that's happening constantly.
Do you rely on any other? Are you of the mindset of when you're getting in there, you just want to be as stealthy as possible and keep yourself concealed, or do you use any like calling tactics or anything like that?
No, I've never been. I've never messed around with any calls or anything like that. And I think I've done some rattling in the past. You know, that time of year just to kind of, I mean, keep things interesting and see if have I ever rattled in a really big buck? No. I mean, I've rattled in some small deer, and I don't typically do it much. Have I grunted at a few deer here and there? Yeah, just to see if it would kind of work. But I definitely I'm more about, you know, keeping my location, you know, undercover because, you know, the minute you start grunting at something and start them deer know exactly where the hell that's coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, you better be if that deer does come in that quick, you better be ready to rock, man. I mean, now if you got a guy who's filming you and he's hitting the horns together and, you know, it's like that perfect time of year and then, you know, you're ready to go to full draw and kill something that runs to the base of your tree, that's a different story. And I mean, that's how you want to do it. But I've always been, you know, I think in better spots to where, you know, I'm not trying to pull deer or you know, I guess, yeah, it's just never been something I've really messed around with. More so just kind of stay concealed and, you know, so you don't see it coming.
Right on. So let's do this. Let's kind of shift gears here at this point. We're hitting the hour mark, and I don't want to keep you up too late, but I think we'd be missing a huge opportunity if we don't kind of talk about some of the gear that you're using. What works?
Yeah, for sure.
What works for you? I mean, aside from tree stands, we're gonna get into that. Is there anything else like? I've heard you talk about your bow and this and that on that prior podcast that you did. Is there anything specifically with archery equipment or like clothing or anything like that you feel that you maybe rely on heavily or that is maybe a little bit different than what you've heard other people talk about?
Let's see. No, I tip honestly, like and it's not because I sell tree stands or I'm about tree stands, but I do think a tree stand is the most crucial part of my gear and what I use. Being able to get in the trees being able to get anywhere that I need to get, it is the most important part. And being able to set up that ambush point properly to where I can get the job done, that's the most crucial piece of the puzzle. I mean, I'm telling you, you could close your eyes and spin in a circle and, with your hand out, whatever bow you're pointing at in the archery shop is going to get the job done.
Right.
You can grab a recurve, you can, whatever you're using. I mean, that doesn't even have, I think, close to the benefit of a stand. Now, if you're starting talking about, I've never been a guy who's really, been a big like shooter or, some of these guys are killing deer at 50, 60 yards, which I think is nuts. I mean, not that it's nuts in general, but I just never be able to do it. I'm not that good of a shot. So, now if you're starting to talk about getting long range, maybe there's, bows that are better for that. But if you're a good shot, you can get it done with really any bow,
Right.
But having a stand, having a piece of equipment that's, not going to make noise on you, it's going to get you in the tree you need to get in. It's going to get you up quick, quiet, safe. I mean, it's going to last, like that right there. Not to mention it's got your life in its hands too. And then, man, clothing, camo, colors, whatever. I mean, whatever you like, man. If you like that real tree pattern, rock it. If you like mossy oak, rock it. If you like a gray sweatshirt, then wear that, I mean, I don't think that really has all that much benefit at all. I mean, I wear different clothes. A lot of times, I wear Carhartt bibs, hunting. They got really sweet, like green, brown colors that I think look really well, or look really good, especially late season. But, so I mean, yeah, I guess I don't really rely on too much special gear. But stands, the sticks, those get me where I need to be.
Are you, do you go through all the effort? Do you have a product that you found to work better than others? Do you do all the, like wrapping your sticks and stands and trying to make things as quiet as possible? Is that something you implement?
No, I don't do too much. I don't do too many mods to the stand. One thing that I've done, I've been known to go a little crazy with tape. I really like that hockey tape, like that fabric tape, or like that camo tape. Like, I don't know, I'm kind of a tape guy. Like, so sometimes I'll definitely tape some screw and steps if I'm using them for a bowl holder, so they're not freaking dinging on my cam. Or, I tape my video camera, so that's not like I definitely use stuff like that to dampen a little bit. But as far as wrapping my entire stand in tape or paracord, no, I've never gotten that nuts with it. I've seen some pretty cool mods that people have done, to make their stuff quiet. But I do think that once you get, once you've started hanging a few stands and you get familiar with your setup, I mean, you can be pretty efficient and you can be silent, without, having to break the bank and, just go crazy with time and effort into doing, these things and, putting pillows in between your sticks and doing stuff like that. So, there's even little things like the way I wrap my sticks, or the way I wrap my belts on my sticks, ensure that there's no metal contact. So, the top V bracket is sitting on the two belts, same as the bottom. And then, the cord trim goes in, I give it a nice squeeze. So I lock those together. Those sticks ain't rattling, making a goddamn noise. I make sure my belts are nice and snug. Even when I set my stick on the tree, I'm not rifling that buckle around the tree. I'm not even giving it the chance to hit on something to make a noise. It's just, me becoming systematic, with how I'm doing things. And I just get in a rhythm of the way that, I don't let it make noise. So, I've never really done too many crazy modifications.
I think like what you just said about once you get used to putting the stuff up and down, you might not need some of that. And I noticed that okay, so I was telling you, I'm kind of new to the mobile hunting thing. This is going to be the first year where I have real adequate, what I deem to be real adequate and efficient equipment. And I made it a point, like beginning of the summer, I'm like, I'm going to put this stuff up and down 50 to 100 times before the season comes, so that when October 1 rolls around, I'm not fumbling around in the dark or in the woods making a bunch of noise. I'm going to have already done this dozens of times and know how to do it in a quiet and efficient manner. And we were out scouting last weekend, and we probably put the stands up and down a dozen times. And by the last time I put that thing up and down, man, I got it figured out to where I was like, because that's been one of those things that was on my list, is like, soundproof all my stuff. And I started to do it on some of my prior equipment. I'm like, this costs money and takes a lot of time. Like, I'm not super excited about doing this. It's kind of a pain in the ass, and then I get done with it. And I have a lot of patience for some stuff, but if I'm not like real focused on what I'm doing, I don't have that much patience for it. And I've stepped back and looked at how I wrap that stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, it looks terrible. Like, not that anybody's trying to win an award contest on what their tree stand looks like, but, at some level you do care. And I look back, I'm like, that is unacceptable, man. I got to cut that shit off there and redo it. And I'm kind of like, do I need to redo it? And the other thing for me is like, I'm hunting a lot of swamp, so I'm just plowing through stuff. And, a lot of times I'm soaking wet by the time I get out there, and I'm changing my clothes on site to fresh clothing. And then when I'm sitting out there, it's raining and bad weather and whatever, and I haven't found a way around when you do sound deaden most of that stuff. Maybe there's some more rubber-based materials that I've overlooked at this point, but like the cloth stuff, a lot of times it holds water, and when you're tearing it up and down, I end up having gloves that are now soaking wet. And I don't know, I just saw some complications with it that I wondered if it was 100% necessary, and a lot of people say that it is. And as of the last couple of weeks, I was starting to steer myself in the direction like maybe I'm going to start off by not having this stuff all like going crazy with the sound deadening material.
Yeah. I mean, I it's like I said, to each their own. I mean, it's if a guy likes, I got a buddy of mine actually wraps his in paracord, and it looks sick. I mean, it looks awesome. I mean, it's quiet. And I know he bullshits me, but I know it takes him a long time to do it too. So
yeah,
I mean, it's one of those things. And like you said too, not even thinking about that, but I'm sure that will absorb a little bit of water. But yeah, so like if you're hanging your stand too and you're grabbing that platform, you might get a wet glove. So that's actually a pretty good point. I never even really thought about anything like that, but yeah, I don't mess around with too many mods. I just think, the way the products are designed, they're very simple. They're very easy to use, very user friendly. Much like the products that Dad designed, so long ago. I mean, everything is just, it was always designed from day one to just, to aid hunters in being successful, and necessity is the mother of invention. And he invented something that, back then was needed, man. Nothing was, nothing was easy and user friendly. So it really makes it nice.
I want to dive into just specifically what you're using and why, and then maybe some of the other products that you have used in the past, or some of the other things that XOP offers and why you think that they might be beneficial over what you choose for other people's different options. But one thing I do want to touch on here real quick is, you just mentioned about like your dad making these things so long ago. Can you just kind of give me like the Cliff Notes version of how that started, and maybe how it evolved into XOP, and kind of give me the rundown on that from somebody that probably has a better idea than 99% of the people out there?
Yeah, no problem. So my old man founded and started the company Lone Wolf Tree Stands. He designed the tree stands in the garage in the backyard back in the late 80s. It was a mom and pop organization, and he just started building and designing products that he wanted to hunt out of. So that kind of grew. The company got built up. I think he really pioneered the climbing stick industry as well as the tree stands, and the cast aluminum technology that he patented so long ago has been, I think, the staple in the hardcore hunter's arsenal to this day. He ended up selling that company in 2006 to a couple gentlemen in Illinois. Lone Wolf is still around. They still make cast aluminum stands. A few years after that, just around like probably 2014, 2015, his original cast patent for the cast aluminum, it finally ran its course. So that technology became available to, everybody. At that time, you've seen, a lot of other tree stand companies gravitating toward that technology. Ameristep, Millennium, a couple other people, everybody's going to try and grab a piece of that pie. At that point in time is when, kind of XOP was born. Dad, as well as myself, were contacted by this new company, knowing that they wanted to get into the, cast aluminum tree stand market. They wanted the originator of the category, I guess you could say, as a, to kind of ensure that they didn't, went down the right path and all that. So, I was approached with the old man to, kind of do some design work, and I head up sales for XOP as well. So it's been a perfect fit. I'm familiar with the stands. I've been using them, and what we've done with XOP is essentially a combination of things that Dad always wanted to do with Lone Wolf and things that I wanted to do with Lone Wolf if we still had the company. So over the course of the years, just, kind of hearing what people said, how could we improve on, something that was already great. And with that being said, we didn't want to start from scratch. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We took those same great products that, he designed so many years ago, and we just innovated them and we made them better. We just, little tweaks here and there, that make that same great cast aluminum stand, a step above and just a little better, work a little easier, set a little tighter, and it's really been, it's really been a good road. So that's kind of how XOP, came about, and, how I continue to design for them and kind of get out those products.
Yeah, those little advancements in technology is why I ultimately decided to reach out to you essentially and have conversation with you about potentially, investing in your products. And I was assured by some other mobile hunters, both on and off the record, that the XOP stuff had features that they felt just, were things that were designed by guys that are really honestly using and testing these products and constantly working to innovate them. And I can say, open and honestly, that I would agree with that after getting my hands on the stuff and seeing, just some of the little things like how the sticks lock together and how the sticks affix to the stand. It's just like, wow, how does somebody come up with this? And what it would take is someone, I would assume, that's one, in the field all the time and thinking about it, and then two, there's just no replacement, right, for long-term experience. And your dad, like you just said, was kind of the, the forefront and innovator in this. And, I've just been kind of blown away by some of the little features and how the things work. It's the nicest gear that I've ever had personally by far.
Oh yeah. I mean, like you said, it's experiences, it's being in the field, it's I mean, hanging stands day in, day out, actually, being in the grind with the products. And, like this, take the steps, for instance. I can't tell you how many times, I was coming in after a fresh rain, climbing up a gnarly hedge tree, and I had those sticks at such an angle, to where the old design, that step was very small and it was very straight. And I mean, I slipped off those sticks more times than I can count on both my hands, and almost freaking fell out of a tree. So, well, with that being said, hey man, we need to make this step a little longer so you can get a little bit more boot on there. We need to arc that end, so even when you do hang this thing on a vicious angle, you ain't slipping off of it. You're not, you're getting up to the stand safe. Works great. Packing into, so many years, and the lone wolf sticks were always great, but stacking them up on top of each other, you're pulling that Velcro or buckle tight to cinch them down. And I can't tell you how many of those I broke. And then I'm carrying my sticks back and they're rattling around a little bit. And you go through those experiences,
Right.
And you just, you want to change things so they operate smoother, operate better. And I think it's just, ultimately because, we're hunters, and that's what we're doing. I mean, it's all about using that product in the field and, getting the advantage.
So, where is XOP based out of now?
Dubuque, Iowa.
Okay. So you have like your headquarters there, your office front there, and then where's I know the manufacturing is done overseas. How's that process? Where is that not something that you're involved in? Like, I just know a little bit because my wife was researching and working on like starting a clothing thing and researching like manufacturing here versus overseas, and they both have their pros and cons and complications. Like, how do you go about like identifying who you want to do the work for you overseas, or is that really not something you have a hand in?
No, actually, no. That it's a good question, and it kind of it's cool to take a look into. XOP is actually under a very big parent company that does importing, and they actually own factories overseas and have a very big connection base for multiple companies and avenues. So that was actually how that company was founded, was just importing projects and stuff like that. So
Okay.
For us, it really wasn't a question of a lot of guys set sails and try and go overseas to find the factory to produce their stuff, and this was more so the owner being enthused about hunting and wanting to get into the industry, and knew he had the right place to make multiple products and stuff like that.
I gotcha. So there was already a pre-existing relationship there before XOP even existed.
Oh yeah. There's that was all set up. So yeah, there was really no guess and check when they did it. And that's the thing, about the import too. It's it's great because we typically we try and import the bulk of our stands, and we do the majority of our assembly, right in Dubuque, Iowa here, with our guys at the warehouse. And, it allows us to take advantage of that cost savings for things like, castings and molds, but also still get, the on-hand QCs of, people assembling stateside and looking at the stuff before it goes in the box and that kind of stuff. So it's one of the ways that we're able to make a high quality product and an affordable one at that.
Okay, well that's kind of interesting. In my head, I was always imagining the things coming in a box, all stacked nicely on a pallet with a big roll of industrial saran wrap around them, and then just coming in and getting shipped out. But it sounds more to me like just the bulk of the rough manufacturing is done overseas, and then you guys are getting the pieces, and the assembly is done there at your facility, and I imagine as would be like a large portion of the quality control and then the packaging.
Yeah, and it's different with every SKU and every product, but we have quality control in China as well as stateside. So, but yeah, we try and do most of the assembly here, and even too, a lot of companies, like you said, with arriving with a nice, pretty bow on them and ready to ride. I think that is what majority of companies typically do. With that being said, we've always done things a little bit different in the sense of, wanting to assemble most here. There's certain things that we do, they might do half assembly over there, and we might do half here. But for the most part, it's nice because we can at least, get our eyes on, the product and, make sure everything's is going well.
That makes sense to me. I mean, you touched on it already. You're relying on this thing for your life. I mean, if you fall, you're not necessarily going to die, but you're going to get screwed up pretty bad, and you potentially could die or sustain a life-altering injury. So, I imagine quality control is a huge, huge portion of you guys having a product that going out that you personally would, trust your life on, right?
Yeah. I think quality control. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Anytime you're elevating a tree, and you're climbing a tree and hanging something there, just like a ladder or scaffolding. Every time you're putting siding on a 2-story house, I mean, there's dangers that come with it, and you just want to be sure you're standing on something that's nice and sound.
Right. Well, it certainly is. I mean, I never had a cast platform before, and what a difference on how that thing soaks up. It soaks up energy, right? Basically, I mean, sound, vibration. You're moving around. I mean, it's such a difference than standing on a traditional $50 tubular and stretched steel welded together stand that is creaks and bends and noisy. I mean, those things are just dead silent. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think the a big thing too was our I-beam going to that, and the original reason Dad went to the cast to begin with was to kind of separate the stand from those the tubes and the welds and the grates and the expanded metal, and in extreme temperatures, those things are, they might be great early season, but the extreme temperatures really bring out the worst in stands like that, as well as age. Sure. So I mean, anytime I've seen steel stands that were rusted and almost rotted through. I've seen just over time welds crack on expanded metal stands, and they make noises, and it's just real nice to have the cast aluminum platform, especially in the cold too. Being that, now us getting rid of that tube in the center of the stand was a really big jump too, because it now makes us the only 100% cast stand. So, the whole stand is just comprised of those 3 components, and getting rid of that center tube is eliminating all possible resonation of sound, through a tube on your stand. So, because now we don't have any.
Right. Yeah, it's just one thing that I noticed right away when I started, messing around with it, is how much of a difference it has, just feeling on your feet and the way the thing kind of soaks up the noise. It's definitely impressive. So all the tree stand options that you guys offer are of that same technology, the cast aluminum platform?
Yeah, we have 3 different models of hang-on tree stands, and then 1 climber model, and everything utilizes the cast technology. That's not something we're looking to get away from. I feel it's just going backwards to use anything else. We made that because we're a high quality stand, and we're trying to provide that best user experience. And that's just the way to be, man. That's the way to have it. Lifetime warranty, quiet, durable. It's just it's the way to go. We actually have 3 different sizes too. We got our small, lightweight type running gun stand. That's the Vanish. That's really popular for heavy cover scenarios, little trees, kind of, packing in long ways. And we got our air raid. That's your standard 30 by 20. It's still great for transport. It's only 12 and a half pounds, lightweight, all cast aluminum, same deal. And then we also got, the big boy, the XL. It's called our Maximus. And that's got a 36 by 24. So that thing, that's got enough room to stretch your legs out and more. Really great for those kind of like pinch sets and maybe something you might set up and leave. And even for the size of it, it's not extremely heavy. It's 16 and a half pounds. And for the size of that platform, and that's what you gain with that cast aluminum.
Right. And then so those are the 3 hang-on options that you have, and then you said you have a climber?
Yeah, we have the 3 hang-ons. We do have a climber as well. The climber is very similar, and just like all of our other products, based off of the old Lone Wolf climber design. We utilize the traction belt just like Lone Wolf, except we have increased the size of the traction belt. It has a thicker cog tooth design, and we've also stiffened up the cables as well as used the harder durometer rubber. So you get a little less sag now with that traction belt, which allows you to kind of, scale up that tree free of obstruction, and you're not, catching on bark or a twig or whatnot. So we've updated the belt in that sense. We have a new Sherlock pin design, so it's very easy to operate that belt and loosen it and adjust it and tighten it and make sure you are, properly engaged. And then we've done other things too, like, the bottom stabilizer portion of the stand. We've arced that and made it a complete one-piece frame for additional clearance when climbing and when you're pitching for those really hard taper trees. Just a lot of little tweaks here and there that we've put into the climber as well as the hang-ons. But again, just with those bulletproof cast aluminum designs.
Yeah, and then you only offer the one set of sticks, right? There's not different stick options. It's the one set of sticks, and I know we already touched on they have a bigger footstep, but are they also a little bit longer than some of the other ones that are out there? What's kind of the breakdown on the sticks?
Yeah, they're a little longer. But the biggest features, the biggest upgrades on those would be like we talked about already, the length on your steps and that arc on your steps. That's sort of 2 big things. We've also increased the separation from the tree an inch too, which is, a world of a difference when climbing.
I noticed that
standoff bracket there is an inch longer, so you're able to get that much more surface area on your boot, as well as having that better traction to cup it with that arc. So that was another big thing. We kept our V brackets do pivot, so they actually take the path of least resistance down that tree. If you hit a knot, or it really allows when you put your weight on that stick. A lot of these fixed V bracket sticks, you'll put your weight on them, and you're just stressing the bracket, and you're not really digging tighter into the tree, especially if you'd hit, like, let's say, a little knot in the tree or a hard section in the bark or a twig. So if you can picture that, you're on the stick, and you're just, it's hitting this obstruction on one side, and it's not letting the stick feed in like it should. So that way you're never going to really have a proper tight fit. But with our stick, when you step on it and your weight drives down on that, it actually allows that V bracket to cock. And what that does is the stick literally does take the path of least resistance, and it wiggles itself down in and bypasses that knot or hard spot in the bark and really gets a rock solid set on it for you. So that's a great thing about the sticks. And the biggest, most popular thing would have to be the patented cord turn locking mechanism. Just, having those sticks able to lock into each other and not have to mess around with any additional straps or bungees like that has been just really popular with the consumer. And we do plan on continuing that technology into a moldable piece for the back of the stand as well. And what that'll do is eliminate any straps whatsoever for, carrying your complete set, stand and sticks.
Yeah, I was kind of already looking at that myself and wondering if that would be something that you could do. I was literally amazed when I pulled those sticks out of a box, and I went to take them apart, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, am I retarded or something? Why can't I get these things? Why can't I get these things apart? And I was amazed that no one had ever told me. And I guess it might be a fact of you just, I don't know how long that technology, you guys have been utilizing that technology, but yeah, you have a quarter turn mechanism it's on the affixed to the back side of the middle step. And then there's a receiver on the front side of the step that you're attaching it to. And when you turn that step in for transport, it locks into the other stick, and you can lock all four sticks together, and they're not going anywhere. They don't move an inch or a quarter of an inch.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's yeah. You hit it right on the head. It's just those they systematically nest together, and it's nice too because you can put as many as you want together as well, and even kind of a stupid feature, but it's really nice for storing your stuff out of season too. I mean, you can kind of hang one stick on the wall and just keep coming off of it, and you don't have to worry about anything like that, or having them all nice and set in one place, and just you don't have a big rattle trap.
I will say for guys that are playing around with them for the first time, I had a lot more ease of putting them together when I only did one at a time versus if I had two together already and tried to put those two to the other two, because you're kind of relying a little bit on the stick giving a little bit to pull into that locking mechanism, and I found it just to be, for me personally, a little more difficult, or a little bit easier to do if I was doing them individually, to get that flex where that thing would almost effortlessly lock in.
Definitely. Yep. You always, that's the best way to run it. Do it one at a time, because that way you can get a nice firm grip. And, that's one of the great things about it, and what makes it so tight into where it's not going to wiggle around, is the fact that it does use the give of that tube, like you described previously, to get nice and tight. So, you really want to make sure when you're locking those in, especially once you got your belts on too, you're giving that thing a nice squeeze and making sure that quarter turn is clearing that front bracket, and then give it a nice turn up and then let go. Now you're actually using, the bind to that stick, and those things ain't going anywhere if they're installed properly. A lot of times, sometimes it's a little hard to get the hang of at first, and guys want to try and force it. But that's just another thing, like we talked about before, becoming comfortable with your equipment, knowing that once you find that first contact point of the front V bracket, you can just lay your stick down. That quarter turn is going to line right up in that slot. You give her a little bit of pressure. I either squeeze it, or if it's on the ground, I just put a little body weight on it, and that thing just goes together so smooth and systematically, one by one. And then, it's nice too when I get to a tree. I always just strap my bottom stick to the stand, or I just set it up that way. So when I get to the stand, without having to take off my set or completely disassemble half my gear to start up the tree, I can literally get 3 sticks up, or 2 sticks, or however many I have, without even touching my set. I just reach back, I pop one off with the quarter turn mechanism, and then I toss it on a tree. Pop the next one off, toss it on a tree. Then I'll, maybe even 3 times, then I'll reassess. I might have to take my last stick off at that point in time. So it just makes everything, definitely function smoother, and it allows you, I think, getting a little bit more of a rhythm when consistently setting up stands.
So is that how your, once you get to your spot and your tree, is that how are you a multiple time up and down? I know everybody does it differently, and there's not a right way really. Everybody has their own preferred method, but how do you do it? Are you up and down the tree multiple times, or are you one up and one down?
I think it depends on, obviously it depends on the tree and how high I'm getting, I think. If I'm getting 8 sticks high, I might have to make a couple trips or something. But typically my setup, what I typically run with and how I set up, I'll be up, I've never been real obsessed with being up in one crack. Um, I would say I go from, maybe up and down once to, if it's a really low set, that I might just go up once. A lot of times I go between. Sometimes I'll have I'll have all my gear on my tow rope, and I'll just have my tow rope hooked up to me. So once I set the stand, I can just pull my gear up, and then I'm up there in one shot. But for me, honestly, I think the little bit of hassle of me pulling all my gear up, I just shimmy down the sticks and go back up. So what I typically like to do, obviously depending on the situation, if I'm creeping in and I'm in a, really tight scenario and I know there's deer around me and I got to get up really quietly and really quick, I'll probably try and make it a one shot. If I'm not trying to be all that nuts about it, and I'm either setting it up a little ahead of time, or if it's not that great, it takes me an extra few seconds to come back down and grab my bow and my gear.
Yeah, if anything.
But for the most part, I always have I never do multiple trips just to get the stand up. So I always start off at the bottom with that one or two sticks, and then I have my stand on my back, and I'm going up. I get all the way up. I get my stuff set. I set it properly how I want it, and then I typically just shimmy back down and just grab my gear real quick.
So how do you go about getting that thing off your back quietly? And are you using like a lineman's belt to have your hands free to be able to do that, or how do you systematically get that thing off your back quietly and up to the tree? How do you do that?
I just have it on my back. I just use the backpack strap. I don't use any sort of device or anything like that. I think that what a lot of people overlook, and I get this, and not to get into a different topic, but I get the request for us to do a double step stick all the time, because guys want to be standing level when they set up their stand, and guys don't like the stagger. What a lot of these guys don't realize is having that staggered stance, having those different points of contact allows you're straddling that tree. You can't straddle that tree if your feet are on the same step. And if you're standing on the top with your feet at the same level, that's super dangerous. Unless you're standing on the top and you got your safety harness and your lineman's belt, and you're just leaning out, which I think that's more messing around. So the way I do it, and you get up, you get one stick, or you got one step or 1 foot on the top step, 1 foot on the middle. You're able to straddle that tree. You got your legs right around it. You're very sturdy, from your waist down, opposed to being, you're standing up with no security whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, I literally, I can slide that thing right off my back and I can hang it in a matter of seconds. That has never been an issue for me. And especially the more you do it, the quicker it goes. I think it's just, like I said, getting that systematic approach that works for you. Another great thing that people love about our products, and they love the accessory, is our offset quick connect. So it's a slotted quick connect bracket that is mounted on the tree, that allows you to just slide the stand right into the bracket instead of having to fumble around with your strap and
Sure.
hook it up and then tighten it. This way you can just, simply reach up, slide it right down in the slot. This bracket's cool too because it's different than most on the market. It's actually, it has multiple slots with different degrees of angle, actually casted right into them. So when your male end of your I-beam seats in there, it adjusts your stand accordingly for how crooked the tree is. So it's really cool. It's actually a really neat device for, or if a guy wants to set up multiple locations and only has a couple stands and he wants to do real quick, hanging hunts and doesn't want to have to worry about where he's got to hang a stand or trim anything out. He's got this bracket there that he knows he can just, boom, get up the tree, slide that stand in the brackets in the right spot. He's got everything ready to rock, and then he jumps in and hunts. So
yeah. I'll add to that one cool thing about, I haven't used that bracket, but I've used similar ones on other brand tree stands. It's kind of nice if you're going in there in the morning and it's dark and you're setting a tree stand and you maybe never sat in that tree a lot of times. I've made the mistake of, the thing's a foot too high or a foot too low for where I have my open shot, and if you already have that bracket existing there in that tree, you can't screw that up. I mean, it could be pitch black out. You set
Oh,
that thing.
yep.
Yep, you're right when you're hanging that thing that you're going to be bulletproof when the sun comes up. So there's another advantage to,
Hundred
another advantage to that. So
100%. Yeah, that's a crucial aspect, especially like you said. You could be off on that, and I think that's why that is so popular, and guys love it because of that, or that is one of the big reasons.
Oh, there was one other thing that I was gonna. Oh, I was gonna say, like you were talking about straddling the tree. I do the similar thing, but I do use a lineman belt because I use a full body harness, and it came with it. And once I
Yeah.
did start using it, it's nice to be able to have both your hands. It's a confidence thing, for me, and a safety thing. And then also that lineman belt is my tether for my harness when I'm up there. So I'm not really climbing with it because that is a hassle. But when I get to my top step, I'll throw that lineman around that tree, draw that tight, and then I'm completely hands free to go about hanging that tree stand. And I think it just helps me personally be a little more efficient and quieter. And then once the stand's locked on, I pull that thing off of there and I get up in there and put that up around the top of my head and lock into my tether. And I'm doing it, I think, in as safe of a fashion as I possibly could. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that definitely gives you that extra security. I know a lot of guys who really love the lineman's belt. Uh, just like you said, to get that other hands free, or get that other hand free, you're kind of sitting there. You got the a really good access point at that stuff, and then even so, like we talked about, I think numerous times, just get your rhythm down that's comfortable for you, and you perfect that. And the more you do it, the smoother it's going to get, and you might tweak it. I like my, you're going to know right where you want that lineman's belt, or you're going to know right where you want your trees on, or your legs on that tree to feel nice and secure. And, you're going to come off your back the same time every time. And it's repetition. I think, it's like that with everything, muscle memory, getting used to it. You do it enough and you're going to be a pro.
For sure. Yep, I completely agree with that. Last thing here, I've just had a lot of people ask me when I was posting photos and stuff of that tree stand if that's the Vanish, and how much if I like it and what my opinion is on it. And I think I heard you say that that's the stand that you're currently kind of lean towards, right?
Yeah, I love that setup myself. That's it's the shape of it. It's really easy to manhandle. It's easy to hang. It's very simple. I like hunting a lot of heavy cover too, so that tight V taper in the back. I really like, if I need to get that thing. I like to position myself in the crotches of trees a lot too, just for that added silhouette factor, and that allows you to tuck right in those small spots. And just a lightweight, good shape. I've never been a guy that really needed a whole lot of extra platform room. But yeah, that's definitely my go-to. I love that stand.
Right on. Yeah, I don't have any complaints about it at all either. It'd be the exact opposite. I think the thing's awesome, and I'm a big fan of it, and I think it's going to be key part of why I envision myself being more successful this year than I have in years past, and we'll see if we'll see if I assess that correctly come the end of the season. But I think, like I said, it's going to be a big part of what I'm doing here this year. So I'm pretty excited about it, man. I'm glad to have it in my arsenal. It's definitely the nicest tree stand that I've ever had, and also the features that allow you to angle the platform and the seat and hang on, not the perfect tree. That stuff's all real critical too. So.
Oh yeah. I'm glad you like it, man. I think it's gonna change your game a little bit this year. I think it's the same thing with a lot of other things. Whether you're into a sport or whether it be, I don't know. I mean, if you're a golfer or something, I'm sure you'll might start out with a cheap set of clubs and eventually kind of,
Right.
figure out the driver you need to get the ball a little farther, and what you like the feel of, and so I think it's just it's an evolution process too, finding out what gear works better for you and how it can help.
Well, right on, man. Well, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do this tonight. I know everybody's that listens to this show is intelligent enough to know to be able to go to XOP Gear through Google and find your guys' website, but you have some social media presence too. I know you got a personal account there on Instagram, and then XOP has an account, and then you guys have a XOP Facebook as well, correct?
Yeah, yep.
So that's cool. I'm following all that stuff now. I'll be looking forward to kind of watching how your season unfolds, and I'm sure you're going to be doing. I know you do a lot of the expos and shows come the wintertime here, and like I know a lot of our listener base here is Midwest. I can see where the downloads comes from. Do you have plans on which ones you'll be doing if people want to see get their hands on and see some of this stuff up close and personal? Or is that not something
Yeah.
you guys decide on this early in the year?
Yeah, we have most of our schedule planned out. We do hit the consumer trade show circuit pretty hard come January, and we typically will hit Wisconsin Deer and Turkey Expo, Ohio Deer and Turkey Expo, the Iowa Deer Classic. We did do the Michigan show this past year in Lansing, which I cannot remember the name of that show.
It's the Deer and Turkey.
Is that the Deer and Turkey as well? Yeah. So we were there. We're thinking about switching it up to. There's another one
Grand
in
Rapids.
Michigan. Yeah, Grand Rapids maybe, and I don't know if that one's going on. I'm so confused, man. We haven't really looked at the show schedule yet, but we do hit a lot of the Midwest shows. We post those on the website too.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we do got a page on the website that'll show all the shows we'll be at. We usually run some pretty good specials, so that's cool. And we love talking to everybody too, and kind of getting feedback on the designs and hearing how their seasons went. So it's always kind of cool to stay in touch with everybody out there and see what we need to improve on.
Well, like I said, again, I appreciate you taking the time to do this tonight. It was a great conversation, and maybe at one of these shows this winter, some way, somehow, we can maybe hook up and sit down face to face and do another podcast. That'd be a lot of fun. So,
yeah, man, I'm totally up for it. I'm getting the itch now. It's starting to cool down here, and
yeah.
Next order of business is just trying to get everything in order for the season rolling up.